Hello and welcome to my preservation station. I'm Angela, the Inquisitive Farmwife, and I'm the host of Freeze Dried February. So excited! This is the first of many amazing videos to come. I felt the first video would be really good to just talk about a few key points. What is freeze drying? Why freeze drying versus other food preservation methods, how I package and preserve, and other items I like to use with my freeze dryer, and what kind of freeze dryer I have. I did a lot of research before I got a freeze dryer. Two really good places, I will link them down below, is the Colorado State Extension and the Utah State University. Have some really in-depth details that you can go into to find out more of the sciencey stuff behind freeze dryers. But I wanted to go ahead and tell you some of the basics because some of you watching today don't know anything about a freeze dryer, and I'm so glad that you're here to learn. So what exactly is freeze drying anyway? There's a 3-step process where basically you freeze your food. You can either put it in the freezer or you can put it in the freeze dryer to freeze. There's benefits to both. When you freeze in your freezer, you're saving time. When you freeze in your freeze dryer, it's a slow freeze. Some say that might get you a little bit better of a product. I'll let you decide what's best for you. Then there is sublimation. Primary drying is when the pressure in the chamber is lowered. Heat is added. This is our vacuum pump, and that's how this works. And it will speed that process where the condenser, which is the silver barrel inside your freeze dry, will accumulate the water, protecting your pump. And then finally, there's secondary drying called absorption. The last of the water is removed by raising the temperature once again to a higher amount so that bonds can be broken from the material and water molecules will disappear, giving you only about 1 to 5% residual moisture. This is why you can keep these foods preserved for up to 25 years. You can store freeze-dried items longer than you can other preserved foods. Now, I enjoy doing all sorts of food preservation. If you don't know, I kind of have a passion for food waste. I like to use every little bit because we work hard for what we get, whether we're buying it from the farmer's market, growing it ourselves, or just having leftovers from when we cook our home-cooked meals. Did you know, within a few days of harvest, you can lose up to half of your vitamins just from harvest if you leave it on the counter. To slow that down a bit, you put it in the refrigerator. Not all fruits and vegetables need to be refrigerated though. Freezing your produce keeps things fairly stable, but it will diminish over time. Some of the things that you put in the freezer, you will need to blanch first. Dehydrating. That's my dehydrator back there. Dehydrating can cause a pretty significant vitamin C loss, and things like fiber are more concentrate. When you can, things like vitamin A, C, thiamine, and riboflavin, you can lose 1/3 to 1/2 of that, while other things like lycopene, which is found in tomatoes, will actually get higher. So there are benefits too, whether you pressure can or water bath. Once canned, you'll lose about 5 to 10% of fibers, vitamin A, keratins, minerals, and vitamin E each year. And then freeze drying, because of the way the heat removes the moisture, it doesn't take away the nutrients. It's so minuscule, like 1 to 3%. I apologize, the day got away from me and the lighting isn't the best in this corner. And let me show you what I mean about different foods that I like to preserve in different ways. These are my dehydrated mushrooms. I also freeze dry and can them. This is a perfect example. When you can mushrooms, you have to be careful about specific types of mushrooms that you can. For example, button mushrooms that don't show gills are perfect for this. If you want to go foraging your native mushrooms, they're not okay for canning. The USDA just suggests not to do that. So, freeze drying and dehydrating is the way that you can still preserve those favorite foods. You can notice that dehydrating does give a different texture and size. When you freeze dry, things don't get smaller, they stay the same. One benefit is when you measure foods out for cooking, you can leave it exactly the same. However, dehydrating will give you more space. Some of my favorite things to make are my own raisins, and I do this through dehydrating. You can also make a grape treat, but they're not quite raisin-like in the freeze dryer. They certainly do hold their color a little bit better. Some other differences between the different ways of preservation is the texture of what the end product is. For example, dehydrated apples are an amazing snack for me, but I don't necessarily rehydrate them to use in baking and cooking. However, I do love home canning apples and apple pie filling and jams. Freeze drying not only makes a good snack, but it also reconstitutes well. You can make any size that you want. You have to be a little more specific when you're canning. There are rules and regulations with canning that you must follow that you don't necessarily have to with dehydrating or freeze drying. For example, one of the biggest reasons I got a freeze dryer was because I have dairy animals, and sometimes there's an abundance. We also have a lot of poultry here on the farm, and in the spring, as much as I would love to say that my eggs are clean enough that I can water glass, it's a muddy mess around here, especially because I have ducks and they just make everything messy. So, my best way of preserving is freeze drying. I've tried freezing. I wasn't impressed with the thought of dehydrating, but when I freeze dried my eggs and milk, I was able to get the quantity I needed in the quality I wanted. And don't be discouraged. If you find that you dehydrate or freeze dry something you don't like, turn it into a powder. The celery that I made, I didn't like either way, but now I have celery salt. If you're interested in that, I have a video. Let's talk a little bit about storage. So once you've gone through the work of doing all this, how do you store these items? Well, it depends on what your purpose is for. Is it long-term or is it short-term? For short-term, I love using mason jars. They just work really well for me. And if it's super short-term, containers like this that have a seal on them are perfect. These are some pasta that I had freeze-dried, and this is really great to have in the kitchen for super fast, ready meals. However, if, say, I'm looking for something more long-term, I like to use my Avid Armor. I always get an amazing seal, and especially if it's something that I want to take all of the air out, look how snug and tight this is. And then I will take a bucket, a food grade bucket, and I will put these in there for a much longer term storage. Avid Armor does also make their own Mylar and clear bags. I like using these clear bags, but they're definitely a shorter term. If you want that extended long-term storage, you're going to want to use the Mylar so it keeps away all the light. Here's an example of a Mylar bag. Because if you leave it on a shelf in a jar like I have here, you will start to lose color in your foods. I also enjoy using these bags. I purchased them from Amazon. I'll try to remember to put a link down below for you. These are for my fun things. They're more like candies and treats. And I just use my impulse sealer that came with my machine to seal them for a shorter term storage. I'd say a month or less. Another really, really great product is 4 jars. I have found that the seal that I use when I get out my Avid Armor, I can also seal jars with this. When I use my 4 jars lids, I never have problems with seals breaking. They always stay nice until I open them up. If you're going to be using something like for cooking on a regular basis, get yourself something like this. 4Jars also happens to have a hand vacuum pump. Those are super handy to take with you on the go when you're camping or hiking, traveling, and you don't even need electricity to make this work, to reseal the jar when you're not using it. Can you believe I've had a freeze dryer for 2 years and I still have yet to name it? Maybe that's something you could do. There are several different brands of freeze dryers on the market these days. Isn't that great? We can have a choice of what we want. What I have here is a Harvest Right. It's a company that's been around for quite a while. It's a name that most everyone knows, and I have been super satisfied with my machine.
One of my favorite accessories for my freeze dryer are the parchment sheets from Freeze Drying Supplies.
Whether you are involved in food preservation for emergency preparedness, garden and orchard, food storage, healthy living, camping, hiking, hunting, or for your pets for food, one thing we can all agree on is we like to save money. And I wanted to let you know that Harvest Right is currently offering a sale, and they're going to, for this month until the 15th, offer up to $500 off of a machine, which they usually only do once a year. That's right, $500 is a huge savings. If that is something that you think you might have interest in, check my link out below. I would love for you to go find out more information about Harvest Right and what type of freeze dryers they have to offer. If you hadn't heard the news yet, make sure you go watch my announcement video with all the prizes. But Harvest Right, in addition to freeze drying supplies with Brian, retired at 40, 4Jars, and Avid Armor are sponsoring this collaboration.
Now make sure you mark your calendars because you don't want to miss out on the big drawing for all those and additional prizes on March 6th, 6 p.m., my channel. Get to commenting on all those videos for more chances to win.
I hope that I brought you some enlightenment to some new information. I hope that you enjoyed seeing the differences of what and why I like to freeze, can, dehydrate, and freeze dry. You all have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.